Greetings to all our beloved viewers from Eternal Light, the channel where we explore the radiant truths of faith, love, and the heart of God together. We send you our warmest blessings of health, peace, and the gentle presence of the Lord in every moment of your life. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Have you ever wondered, who are the ones chosen by God? Are they perfect people? Do they possess some divine power? Or could it be you? Yes, you. Amid your weaknesses, mistakes, and wounds, who is being quietly called by God? Today's video will unveil a profound and moving truth, one that may shift how you see yourself and your journey of faith. Don't rush to leave, because what you're about to hear is not just theory, but a living flame from the Word of God, shared through a deep spiritual lens and intertwined with vivid stories from the Bible and real life. We believe that if you stay until the end, something within your soul will awaken and a spark of hope will shine through the shadows of uncertainty and doubt. If you find this video meaningful, don't forget to hit like, share it with others to spread God's light even further, and leave a comment below. Your voice encourages and inspires our mission more than you know. Here at Eternal Light, we are honored to walk with you, someone who is seeking truth, walking in faith, and maybe, just maybe, you are one of those chosen by God. Let's discover this beautiful mystery together. Chapter 1. The chosen are not who the world expects. In a world governed by fogged mirrors, where human gazes endlessly lose themselves in the labyrinth of surfaces, God's choice of the lowly, the insignificant, the forgotten, is not merely a paradox. It is a direct strike at the arrogant fabric of human order. Perhaps no one has ever had the courage to knock on the door of divine selection hoping, I am worthy. And if someone dares to think so, perhaps it is precisely that pride which excludes them from God's watchful eye. God, in an act both gentle and subversive toward human reason, has always sought the deepest shadows, where weak, timid, trembling souls hide, just to reach out and say, I see you. The world will look at one who has nothing, no power, no fame, no achievement, and declare useless. They will sit in conference rooms before charts and lists, before resumes and rounds of applause given to those who have walked the stage of glory, believing this is how to choose a leader, a chosen one. But on another path, in dust, in sheepfolds, in barren hills, where a quiet light filters through cracks in the walls, God quietly performs a completely opposite act. The story of David in the Bible stands as a clear illustration. When the prophet Samuel was sent by God to Jesse's house to anoint one who would become king of Israel, he saw Jesse's older sons, tall, imposing, seemingly born to rule. But one by one, God said, not this one. And finally, to the point Jesse nearly forgot David, the youngest who was only tasked with tending sheep in the fields, he reluctantly said, there is still the youngest, but he is watching the sheep. Samuel asked for him to be called. And when David entered, God said, this is the one. A boy overlooked by his own father, not counted among the hopeful, was chosen to lead the nation. This not only upends human selection models, but exposes our blindness when looking at what cannot be seen by the eye. And then, not only David. In the dark pages of the book of Judges appears another figure, Gideon. When the angel of the Lord came to him, Gideon was secretly threshing wheat in a winepress, a strange furtive act born of fear of the Midianites. This man bore no warrior's demeanor. He told the angel almost despairingly, I am the least in my family, the weakest in the tribe of Manasseh. Yet God does not seek worldly courage. He seeks humility. Not those who say I am strong enough, but those who say I cannot unless you are with me. And then there is Jesus. The paradox reaches its apex when the Son of God, the very one before whom angels bow, was born in a stable, wrapped in cloths, laid in a manger where animals still feed. In the eyes of the world, this was a lowly and laughable beginning. How many children are born into silks and castles, amidst the sweet sounds of temple choirs, considered the hope of a nation, but none among them die on a cross to save humanity. And when Jesus began to preach, it was the villagers who asked, isn't this the carpenter's son? As if that humble origin were reason enough not to believe in something greater. The deeper one delves into the sacred texts, the more a recurring pattern emerges. God chooses the weak. He does not choose Pharaoh, but Moses. The man who once killed was chased away and wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. He does not choose eloquent speakers, but one who stammers. He does not choose the flawless, but the fallen who have knelt in sin, so that they may understand grace. Like a strange indictment against human standards, the Bible continually overturns every definition of success, worth, and selection. The frightening and hopeful truth is that in the mirror God holds up to us, the chosen face is not at all what we expect. It does not wear the glory the world bestows. It does not smile brightly in formal frames. It is the face of one who has been rejected, who has sat alone, who has said, "Lord, why have you forgotten me?" Yet still continues to believe. There is a Kafkaesque feeling that envelops the way God chooses, because it defies reason. It is like an invisible court, where the verdict is not based on defense, but on the deepest inner truth, seen by none but the Creator. Kafka's world is one where the innocent are condemned without cause. The biblical world is where the worthless are chosen for the greatest mission. Both reveal a system beyond human comprehension. God acts as a judge unaffected by the whispers of the world. He does not read dossiers, nor listen to applause. He sees the heart. Therefore, if you feel cast out of the light, if you sit in a room where no one knows your name, no one praises you, no one lists you among the honored, know this: perhaps you are closer to God's choice than you think. Because at the lowest place, when you have nothing left but grace to hold on to, that is where God begins. Only His call is very quiet, and only those who no longer care for the noise of the world can hear it. Chapter 2. God sees the soul when people see only the outside. People look with their eyes, but God looks through a perspective none of us can fully understand, as if He sees not through the skin or clothes, but straight into the most intangible place, the place without light, where people usually hide all their weaknesses and sincerity, the heart. And in a world where every gesture is categorized, every face is classified, every outfit judged with silent disdain or admiration, this is nothing less than a silent coup against the entire aesthetic system of humanity. There is a widespread insecurity among people, that self-worth depends on what others see. But if the only truly important eyes do not look at what they look at, then do all efforts to adorn oneself still hold any meaning? Samuel, the faithful prophet, was once a victim of this mistake. When he came to Jesse's house to anoint the one who would become king, his eyes betrayed him. He saw Eliab, the eldest son, tall and strong, and his heart rejoiced. Surely this is the one the Lord has chosen. But then a whisper came from deeper than any echo, the voice of the Lord, cutting through his thoughts. Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord does not see as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. Perhaps Samuel stood stunned for a moment, like someone realizing for the first time that their eyes had been blind to the truth. He stood there, understanding that in his most sacred task, he had nearly become someone who only believed in what was seen. The world operates the opposite way. It demands a facade. Social media pages, perfectly fitted suits, carefully edited words spoken, like layers of masks piled on top of each other, to hide an interior trembling with the fear of being exposed as someone unsure of their own worth without that facade. In a society measured by degrees, achievements, likes, and followers, who dares to say they have the courage to live nakedly? But that is exactly what God is seeking, a soul that needs no proof, only obedience. And sometimes what He finds is in the most unexpected places. In the temple, where the wealthy come to give offerings, coins drop into the treasury box like the ringing of honor bells. Each sound an announcement, I have done good. But amid those sounds, there is another sound, small, lonely, 2 copper coins from a widow. No one notices. Perhaps she walks away with the demeanor of someone who does not want to bother anyone, eyes downcast, hand trembling. But Jesus saw. He called His disciples and said, Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. Mark 12:43. Not because of the amount, but because of the heart. Not because she had much to give, but because she gave all she had. In that world, wealth is not measured by money, but by the depth of faith. In the darkness of the secret place, God needs no flashlight, no background check, no resume. He knows, he sees, he calls. And the terrible, yet also the most gentle thing, is that he still calls, even when he knows what we hide inside. There is something Kafkaesque about this, that we live in a world where everyone pretends, but no one dares to look inside because it is too chaotic, too full of contradictions. And then an almighty judge comes, not to condemn, as in Kafka's novels, but to bless, even when our sins abound. In the strange play of the world, the leading roles go to those without props, unprepared. Not the smartest, not the most beautiful, not the most powerful, but those with the softest hearts. Hearts soft enough to hear the call, humble enough to obey, and brave enough to believe in what no one else believes. God does not build his kingdom with granite stones, but with broken hearts. For only there can his light penetrate. And perhaps that is why he is often absent from places too polished, too perfect, because such places leave no room for imperfection, while God always enters through the cracks. He comes to those who know they are not enough, for only such people are ready to receive everything. He is not deceived by neat clothes, formal prayers, or pious faces. He digs down to the deepest truth, where only one thing remains: I need you. We live in a civilization designed to conceal. But God does not need to peel layers. He goes straight through. If tomorrow God appeared before you not in dazzling light but in terrifying silence, just to ask, do you have faith? You could not show your degrees, your bank account, or your achievements. You could only offer your heart, either a trusting heart or one closed too long in showiness. And if today you feel like that widow with nothing to give but 2 small coins, nothing to boast about, but quiet faith, then you are standing exactly where God looks. In this noisy world, where people look with their eyes, remember, he looks with the eyes of truth. And in that gaze, the smallest thing can become great, because God does not see you as people see, but as the Creator who sees what he has always loved, even when it is rejected by the whole world. Chapter 3. God sees the soul when people only see the outer appearance. The chosen ones often begin as a tragic joke among the crowd, an extra on the worldly stage where serious faces busily arrange the rankings of who is valuable and who is not. Those people, David, Gideon, Joseph, do not enter the story as glorious heroes, but as outsiders, pushed to the sidelines by worldly eyes that cannot recognize a soul quietly blazing beneath the ashes of rejection. And it seems this is God's discreet method, choosing those whom no one else chooses, lifting up the lowest of the low, and beginning his great plans in the weakest and most redundant forms that humans can imagine. Look at David, the smallest of his brothers, the one not called into the house when the prophet Samuel came looking for the new king of Israel. Where was he? Out in the fields, tending sheep. No one thought he was important enough to be present at that fateful ceremony. Even his own father did not mention his name until pressed. In that oblivion flickered a terrible irony. The one most despised was the one God chose. Could this be how God always works? While the proud faces put themselves on the candidate list, he silently steps toward the one who doesn't even know they could be chosen? What about Gideon? When the angel of the Lord appeared and called him mighty warrior, he immediately denied it. He said, I am the least in my family, the weakest in my clan. Like a Kafkaesque dream, where the weakest is assigned an impossible task, and life is turned upside down like a book without rules. But it was precisely because he thought himself unworthy that he could obey. God does not need proud egos, only willing souls. That paradox, that God's power is made perfect in weakness, is what makes his choosing both shocking and mystical. And then there is Joseph, a dreamer, a brother hated by his own siblings. When he shared the dream that their sheaves would bow to his, he did not foresee that these words were the beginning of a tragic downfall. Joseph was sold into slavery, falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, forgotten in prison. His life was a series of rejections, not once but repeatedly, as if God was deliberately crushing him, breaking every illusion and pride before rebuilding him into a man worthy to govern all of Egypt. Rejection in his case was not a sign of failure, but the raw material for divine training. Moses was no better, a murderer, a fugitive into the wilderness, living anonymously for 40 years as if forgotten by God and the world. But it was in that prolonged silence in the barren desert setting that his soul was shaped. No one saw anything in Moses except God, and that was enough. When the burning bush flared without being consumed, a chilling symbol of divine presence in forgotten things, God called him. Not in a golden palace, not among political councils, but in the lonely wilderness where no one hears or sees. It is strange but true to say, being rejected is the first stage of being chosen. People often mistake rejection as proof of worthlessness, but God uses that rejection to cleanse the soul from impurities. Pride, the need for recognition, the obsession with success. He allows shame, loneliness, being misunderstood, like a refining fire, a slow burn in the chest that breaks down old structures and leaves just enough space for him to enter. Like in Kafka's Nightmares, where the main character suddenly is condemned without reason or drawn into a system no one explains, the chosen often find themselves in absurd circumstances unworthy of their heart. They are betrayed by family, forgotten by society, crushed by fate, as if the world collectively says, "You are not allowed a role in this play." But while humanity slams all doors shut, God opens a secret, eternal way against the current. This is no careless arrangement, but a deep purpose. So the chosen cannot rely on anything but Him. Not beauty, not status, not family background, not talent, only obedience. And because that person has tasted rejection, they have compassion for the lowly. Because they have walked through the hell of isolation, they do not confuse success with salvation. They become a tool both strong and gentle, a combination that cannot form without time spent forgotten, tormented, and crushed. We who often ask why we are pushed aside, why we are not chosen, not loved, not understood, we might be exactly where God begins. Perhaps this silence is not neglect, but preparation. Perhaps, like Joseph, like Moses, like David, we are living the early chapters of a story whose ending is still being written by God's hand. And if so, then the rejection we endure today, painful, irrational though it may be, is not an ending but a pause, a break before that extraordinary door opens. A door only for those who know that being cast out does not mean being abandoned. In the sacred universe that Kafka might also admit is incomprehensible, invisibility is where greatness hides. And those rejected today will be the chosen ones when all the lights go out and only one light remains, the light of the one who sees what is hidden where no one else looks. Chapter 4. The chosen one goes through a process of silence and suffering. No one can see, at the moment a soul is chosen by God, that the gate which just opened does not lead to a throne, but to a long, pitch-dark corridor with no welcome greeting, no signposts, no sound except your own footsteps echoing on the cold stone floor. Entering God's selection is like stepping into a silent exile, as if you are called in only to be left behind in a room where the walls whisper unanswered questions, and every passing day is a strange test whose reason you cannot understand. The chosen one does not stride directly into glory, but slips into a lingering silence as cold as a spiritual tomb. It is a phase that, if described in Kafka's language, is like a trial where you are unaware of your crime, a wait with no expiration date, a sentence with no verdict. It is in that space that faith is crushed, and it is also there that faith is restructured according to an order no longer dependent on reason or emotion, but solely on the silent and unchanging presence of God. Look at David, a young shepherd anointed as king among his brothers, a ceremony full of promise, a flash of light in ordinary days. But that light did not open the throne. It opened the journey of fleeing. After being called, David did not ascend the throne immediately, but was driven into the wilderness, living like a criminal hunted by the very king he was destined to replace. During those years, David did not fight his enemies with sword and spear, but with God's silence, hunger, loneliness, fear, and the persistent question, if God has chosen me, why does He let me endure this? That is the image of purification, not in glory, but in the dust, where the soul is stripped of all false layers and laid bare before God. Because God is not in a hurry. He does not entrust great missions to those still intoxicated by glory. He waits like a craftsman, heating the soul in fire, bending character with the hammer of adversity, and cooling it in the waters of solitude. Only when one no longer relies on their own strength, no longer clings to their own will, does he begin to write the next chapter. Even Paul, who once persecuted the church, upon meeting Jesus on the road to Damascus, did not become an immediate missionary. The light blinded him, and it was in that darkness that he began to see. He did not step onto the pulpit, argue, or organize instant evangelism. He went into Arabia, into a silent place no one spoke of, for 3 years, a long time during which no one knew what he was doing. But perhaps it was precisely in that silence that the layers of pride, knowledge, and fame, things he once boasted about, were stripped away one by one, making him a humble instrument in God's hand. And that is the law. It seems always so, that the chosen one must endure a phase of silence, long as the night before dawn, where all faith is stretched to the breaking point, where prayers echo against silent walls. In Kafka's style, it is a room where one is locked up without clear reason, where truth is no longer outside but distorted, hidden by a metaphysical force. But in spiritual reality, it is the phase when God is silent, so that the soul learns to live without evidence. Humans want instant experience, want everything revealed, want glory immediately after the promise. But God is not a magician, He is the creator. And like all great works, construction never begins with the dome or the main gate, but with the foundation, deep and unseen. That is why the chosen often feel lost, forgotten, and defeated. Not because they have taken the wrong path, but because they are being placed in the foundation pit. A place with no audience, no applause, only the sound of digging and God's whisper, "Wait, I am not finished with you yet." And at that moment, when you feel most useless, true transformation begins. Not in victory on the battlefield, but inwardly, when you stop asking when, why, how long, and begin to say, even silently, "You know, and I'm still here." That is not surrender, but obedience. It is not loss, but metamorphosis. Because the soul, like a Kafka insect shedding its old shell, is truly shaped only when it has nowhere left to hide. The chosen, therefore, are not those with noble titles, but those who have walked through a long night without light and kept their faith. Those who have suffered without shouting, endured silence without resentment. They emerge from that refining process not as triumphant heroes, but as those who know their own smallness. And precisely because of that, they can be entrusted with great tasks by God. The world may not understand them. Family may reject them. Even they themselves may sometimes not understand who they are. But God understands. He is building a person, not to please the world, but to fit a plan no one can foresee. And while that person kneels in the night shedding tears no one wipes away, God is carving their name into his heart, like a craftsman etching every line into stone, slowly, persistently, and indelibly. And one day, when preparation is complete, they will step out. Not as one who has just escaped prison, but as one who knows that the prison itself saved their soul. And when they speak, their words will no longer be theory, but life. When they act, their actions will no longer stem from self, but from the one who lives within them. And when the world asks in astonishment, "Where do you come from?" they will only smile, for they know they come from the place where God works silently, in silence, in suffering, to prepare an unnoticed person for an unexpected mission. Chapter 5, Signs of the Chosen Ones. They are always faithful in small things. There is nothing more tragic for a soul living amidst the mundane than to dream of greatness, and nothing more dangerous for a chosen one than to lose themselves in the desire for immediate grand results. But in the harsh and ruthless logic of the spiritual world, God does not care about greatness as humans usually define it. He sees through the microscopic, the unseen actions, the silent choices made in the dark, and the times we do what is right without applause. From this perspective, the chosen one is not the one publicly honored, but the one faithful in small things, a faithfulness almost obsessive, repeated unconsciously, as if their soul were imprisoned in a quiet duty from which there is no escape. Strangely, Franz Kafka, who wrote stories about characters crushed by the invisible machinery of powerful forces, might understand this better than anyone else. Because being faithful in small things is like living in an endless cycle of administrative tasks. No one knows what you do, no one cares you exist, no one acknowledges your tiny actions. But it is precisely in this repetition, in this rhythm unseen by anyone, that God measures the depth of the heart. As in Luke 16:10, whoever is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. Not a comforting slogan, but a cold indictment of those who want great missions without accepting to fade away in nameless things. In the story of Ruth, loyalty does not come from solemn public vows, but from the decisive act of following Naomi, an old woman, depleted of hope, with nothing left to give. Ruth did not choose the easy path. She did not return to her homeland to find a new husband or a safe life. She followed a desperate mother-in-law to a foreign land, accepting the lowly work of gleaning, a humble, dishonorable task. And in that humility, Ruth was seen by God. Not because she loved Naomi romantically, but because she was faithful in the smallest things, caring, staying, and not turning away. Because of this, she was linked into the lineage of King David, and beyond that, to Christ. A chosen one does not start with a throne, but with a field of leftover grain. David, before facing Goliath, fought lions and bears in the shadows of the fields. No one knew that boy. No one saw him practicing his harp or sharpening his stones. No one questioned why a child risked himself to save a lamb. It made no sense. But in that nonsense, God saw a faithful heart. David did not need a stage. He did not act because others were watching, but because the silent presence of God was enough to compel him to live truthfully, fight, and protect every sheep as if it were his life's mission. No prophets, no announcements, no titles, just stones, a sling, and a sincere heart. And from there, God decided, this is the one I have chosen. The chosen one does not need the spotlight. They live in a small room where repetitive daily tasks tick like a clock whose beats no one remembers. But they do not act out of fear of being late. They act because they know a gaze is watching, not the worldly gaze of supervision, but the penetrating gaze of God. In Kafka, characters are tormented by the invisible presence of an unknowable regime, but in the Bible, that regime is called the kingdom of heaven, where no deed is too small to be overlooked. There is a sacred kind of boredom, where the chosen do not rebel, do not flee, do not complain, but simply continue to do what must be done, day after day, with a strange, almost innocent faithfulness. And in that sadness, a miracle happens, because each time they are faithful in small things, they weave an unseen fabric that will one day be worn as the cloak of their mission. Every silent gleaning, every night watch over the sheep, every refusal to deceive in small matters, they are engraving their names in God's ledger. Today's world craves performance, instant results, and recognition. But in God's world, everything moves slowly, painfully slowly, like an old Kafkaesque machine still turning the gears of faith, faithfulness, and virtue. He does not entrust great things to those unfaithful in little, for he does not need superficial heroes. He needs those who are silent and persistent, souls who know that sometimes just standing firm in small matters is itself a miracle of faith. We live in an era where faithfulness in small things is despised. People like to jump from one mission to another, to be called without training, to be sent without learning to stay. But the truly chosen understand that faithfulness is not a phase, but a nature. They are faithful not to gain something, but because they cannot be otherwise, because they know God is watching, and because of love, not reward. And perhaps on the final day, when all records are burned and all stages turn to dust, God will step forward and not ask, "How many nations have you conquered?" but will whisper, "Were you faithful with my little flock? Did you glean even without pay? Did you keep your heart pure even when no one watched?" And the chosen will nod, without regret, without pride, because they know that faithfulness in small things is not a stepping stone to greatness, but the path that leads to God's heart. Chapter 6. God exalts his chosen ones at the right time. In a crowded world filled with noise, where people constantly try to rush time according to their own will, waiting becomes an unbearable burden. People hurry, compete, and struggle, sometimes not hesitating to use any means to climb the heights of power. But amid this chaos, there is another order, an invisible law that humans cannot understand, a silent operation beyond worldly norms. That is how God exalts the chosen at the appointed time. It is precisely in waiting, in silence, and in what seems like abandonment that the greatest promotion is determined, not by cunning or schemes, but by the powerful hand and wisdom of the Creator. Like a Kafkaesque script, where the protagonist is often trapped in labyrinths of time, living in inexplicable voids, so too the chosen by God do not scramble for the throne, nor attempt to manipulate or forcibly intrude into high positions through power plays. David, the humble shepherd, did not rush to become king after being anointed by the prophet Samuel. Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers, falsely accused and imprisoned, did not try to seize power or fame by his own means. Both lived in silence, in circumstances that seemed like failure, rejection, and hardship, but neither ever crossed the boundary set by God to claim their power prematurely. The Bible does not just tell stories of success, but rather long, drawn-out days of trial and waiting, proving that haste is the enemy of wisdom. Esther, a young unknown girl brought into the Persian palace, did not get there by ambition or cunning, but because a predetermined time had come, a moment when the prophecy rang out. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Esther 4:14. This was a moment where God's power was revealed through his silent choice, not through human plans. Daniel, exiled in Babylon, is another witness to God's exaltation at the right time. In captivity in a foreign land, Daniel did not resist, use schemes, or escape. Instead, he held firm in faith, lived honestly, and kept a pure heart among pagans, and was exalted by God to become a high official in the Babylonian and Median courts. His promotion did not happen overnight or within a month, but came after many long years of patience, perseverance, and faithfulness in small tasks. No haste, no contesting, just waiting quietly until God's power was revealed. Perhaps this is the hardest lesson for those who harbor the desire to be chosen, entrusted with a mission, and to see the light of glory. The world encourages speed and impatience, making it easy to get lost in schemes and selfish plans. But the chosen do not follow this path. They are those who know how to wait patiently, trusting that the hand of the Most High will lift them up at the right moment, neither early nor late. They do not hasten the process with pride or worldly tricks, because they understand that a great mission can only be entrusted when character and faith have been shaped over time. It is precisely in that waiting that people often lose heart and faith, like Joseph in prison, David in the wilderness, or Esther in the palace. They may look around and see unworthy people favored, powerful individuals they do not understand. But God's choice is not based on popularity or public opinion, but on wisdom beyond all human understanding. What humans perceive as slowness or delay is actually God's perfect preparation time. The loneliness and alienation of the chosen during their waiting period are sometimes the greatest trials. Kafka would write about people standing between existence and absence, between longing and silence, where no one understands or witnesses. But in that solitude, the chosen are not alone. They have the eternal gaze of God watching over them, a powerful hand guiding them, and an unchanging plan. They need only to keep their faith and loyalty to the small things God has assigned. This is a profound paradox. When the world sees success achieved through scheming and struggle, in God's eyes, true success comes only when the chosen are patient and faithful in their quietest days. The chosen need not hasten fate or compete for status, because when the right time comes, he will make everything clear, and power will be proven through God's justice and wisdom. Thus, the final lesson is not haste or desire for glory, but absolute trust in God's timing. When the world is driven by clocks, social pressure, and arrogant ego, the chosen keep a quiet and patient soul, knowing that no one can change God's time, nor can anyone steal the glory meant for them when that time arrives. Only then will the chosen step onto the stage, not to fight, not for power, but for the mission entrusted to them. They will stand there not as contenders for the throne, but as bearers of a sacred responsibility, a mission prepared long ago in silence and suffering. Like David, Joseph, Esther, and Daniel, they are exalted not by their own strength, but by faithfulness in days of trial, patience in days of abandonment, and unwavering trust in the powerful hand of the Most High. From Kafka's perspective, ordinary life is a painful ambiguity, an endless maze of waiting and disappointment. But in the light of the Bible, that waiting is indispensable. The bricks that build the castle of grace, where the chosen are not just great individuals, but faithful witnesses to God's wisdom and power, exalted at exactly the time He has ordained. Chapter 7. The Chosen One Must Not Think Like the World. In a world where every path seems to lead to easy consensus, where harmonious voices are most favored, the chosen one is forced to walk a contrary path, a path full of loneliness and alienation that no one else can understand. Ordinary people are not allowed to think like the world because in their minds, a higher standard, a deeper direction has been inscribed by a divine light that they cannot deny or turn away from. If the world looks at them through worldly eyes, they appear no different than madmen, outcasts, bearers of burdens no one wants to carry. Kafka, with his pen soaked in the tragedy and absurdity of human existence, would portray the chosen ones as alienated individuals in society, as ghosts punished for not blending into the common flow, because they refuse to submit to the vanity and temptation of the world. They are compelled to put God above all else, not merely as a vague belief, but as a life, a definition of themselves and the path they must walk. It is precisely this placing of God above all that makes them different, and this difference makes them people the world cannot tolerate. Let us look at Jeremiah, the prophet despised, rejected, and insulted by his own people simply because he spoke God's truth. His words were not sweet or easy to hear, but were a warning, a judgment people did not want to hear. The world always wants sweet words, praise, or at least agreement. But Jeremiah chose honesty, chose the painful path of speaking what no one wanted to listen to. Kafka would describe him as a man standing in the midst of a bustling street, trying to utter the truth amid meaningless noise, feeling like a rebel, an outcast whispered about, forgotten, but unable to be silent. Jeremiah's loneliness is a mirror for the chosen ones, that faithfulness to God sometimes means alienation, rejection, even by one's own kind. Meanwhile, Paul, the one who once persecuted believers but became a preacher of the cross, is also a testament to this difference. To the world, Paul's message about the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is nonsense, even madness, as he himself admits in his letter to the Corinthians. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God. 1 Corinthians 1:18-25. Kafka might portray Paul as a sleepwalker in a dark world, mad in the eyes of men, but a guiding light to those who recognize the true meaning of life and death. Paul does not chase worldly standards, nor fear contempt or rejection. He steadfastly holds to the truth God has given, a truth understood and received only through deep faith. The thinking of the chosen one is always a paradox the world cannot explain. They reject temporary values and fleeting desires, looking instead to eternity and unchanging truths. They do not seek the support of the majority because they know truth is often isolated and opposed. In that loneliness, they hold fast to their faith, living with a blind yet genuine hope so painful it wounds, because they believe that one day their difference will be vindicated, and they will stand in the light they once bore in darkness. Kafka would not depict this difference as glamorous or dazzling, but slow, heavy, like the suffocating feeling of one separated from the surrounding world. The chosen ones walk on a path strewn with stones, their steps weighed down by doubt, contemptuous looks, and silent betrayals. But they are not allowed to give up, because their mindset is enlightened by the Most High, unable to dissolve into worldly currents, unable to compromise with vanity and emptiness. Like Jeremiah and Paul, the chosen ones often endure fierce resistance from the world, from fellow sufferers, or even from loved ones. They carry a burden no one sees, a mission no one understands. But rather than turning back or trying to fit in, they persist, holding firm to faith in a plan beyond human sight, knowing all things happen according to the will of the Almighty. It is this placing of God above all that makes them see the world through a different lens, where all material things and power are fleeting shadows passing through eternity. They are not swept away by waves of desire and fame, nor shaken by social standards or human recognition. They know their true path is the way of the cross, the path of sacrifice and faithfulness, of difference and loneliness, but also the path leading to true life. Such people, in Kafka's eyes, are not radiant heroes but lost souls, the loneliest in humanity's dark night, ghosts carrying a sacred flame the world cannot extinguish. They are living proof of another world's existence, a world where God's truth and love transcend all human understanding. Therefore, the mindset of the chosen must surpass all worldly standards, not merely as an external difference, but as the deepest affirmation of their nature. They live for God, not for the world. They must not think, act, or feel like the world, because in every thought, every action, and every emotion, they must reflect the holiness and faithfulness God demands. That paradox, that loneliness, is not a judgment or punishment, but an honor, a privilege few recognize or dare to accept. They carry a mission, a sacred responsibility that only by holding firm to their difference, by not chasing the world, can elevation and glory come to them. And though they may be seen as mad or alienated in the eyes of the world, they firmly believe that only faithfulness to God gives their life true meaning and brings eternal life beyond all the world's fleeting vanities. Final chapter. God does not seek perfect people. He seeks the willing. Under the dim light of a world where imperfection, weakness, and wounds are never hidden, we clearly feel a simple yet profound truth. God does not seek the perfect. He does not wait for radiant faces, flawless steps, or ideals neatly arranged within the framework of worldly success. He seeks the willing, souls who accept themselves in all their weakness, hearts open in humility, and the will to surrender everything into His hands. As if amid the chaos and confusion of life, a small door opens, inviting each willing person to step through, and God, the Almighty, will do the rest. In Kafka's world, this willingness is not an easy gesture or a glorious moment, but a lonely and complex journey. It is like a man standing in the middle of a dark maze, unsure of the way, unable to understand why he has been pushed there, yet still moving forward. It is the acceptance of oneself with all contradictions, failures, and the deepest wounds. It is letting go of all illusions of perfection, leaving only a fragile but steadfast faith that an invisible hand will guide and accomplish what we cannot do. The Bible gives us the most vivid testimony of this through the image of the good thief on the cross. A man hanging on the cross, amid the utmost pain and despair of his body, but with just a sincere repentance, he was granted an unimaginable grace to be chosen to be with God in heaven. Luke 23:39-43. Not by merit, not by great deeds or worldly achievements, but simply by willingness, repentance, and faith in salvation. Kafka would see here a paradoxical but no less wonderful image. Weakness and near total failure are the door to the greatest redemption. God's grace, the miracle in this mystery, is that He chooses the weak, ordinary, and flawed people to accomplish mighty things the world cannot understand. This is a profound paradox, where power does not come from human strength, but from complete surrender to God. Such people are not victors by worldly standards, but are the truest victors in faithfulness and humility. This choice surprises the world because it cannot explain it. It delights heaven because it is the full will of the Most High fulfilled through those seemingly ordinary. Looking at the stories in the Bible, from David, the poor shepherd who became a great king, to Paul, the persecutor of believers who became a great preacher, we see a marvelous repetition of the same pattern. They did not start perfect, but with willingness and faith. It is the readiness to embark on a challenging journey without knowing the outcome, the trust in God's guiding hand even when life is darkest. Kafka might describe them as wandering ghosts in a long night's delirium, but also as tiny lights piercing through the dense darkness, symbols of hope that never fades. We, those hearing this, those facing uncertainties, weaknesses, and great questions about ourselves, do not need to be perfect to be called chosen. Do not let shortcomings, mistakes, or painful days hold you back. Open your heart to receive willingness. Let God do the rest. In the chaos of life, in the darkness of the soul, a light will flicker, and from there, a new journey will begin. From Eternal Light Channel, we send warm greetings to all. Those seeking light in the darkness, bravely walking the difficult path of faithfulness and humility. See you in the next videos where we will explore deeper about God's love, salvation, and faithfulness at every step of life. Please join the channel so you never walk alone on this journey of faith, and every day we may be illuminated by His eternal light. God does not seek the perfect, He seeks the willing, and it is this willingness that will bring us closer to Him, to eternal life, where all suffering and imperfection are healed and transformed into unimaginable glory. Hold on to your faith, open your soul to receive grace, because it is precisely in weakness that God's power is fully revealed.